Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a treasure hid in the field, the which when a man hath found, he hideth, and for joy thereof goeth and selleth all that he hath, and buyeth that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a net that was cast into the sea, and gathered of every kind, which when it was full, they drew to shore, and sat down, and gathered the good into vessels, cast the bad away.
A transfer of rulership is coming, and the kingdom of heaven will be on earth. Righteousness will be spread throughout the whole four corners of the earth. Wickedness will be put down.
You are my servants. Remember your place. We obey you, Majesty. We are honored to toil for you.
The time is right. The harvest will come. The world swiftly.
A transfer of rulership is coming, and the kingdom of heaven will be on earth. Righteousness will be spread throughout the whole four corners of the earth. Wickedness will be put down.
Yes, Your Highness. We will obey. You are doing well. Thank you, my king. Let them see the might of the throne. Yes, Your Majesty. Work. Let the land yield its riches. Yes, Your Majesty. I survey my domain. They are toiling as commanded. Yes, Your Majesty. We work until the sun sets. Let them work. The yield today is satisfactory. Keep them working. Yes, Your Majesty.
A transfer of rulership is coming, and the kingdom of heaven will be on earth. Righteousness will be spread throughout the whole four corners of the earth. Wickedness will be put down.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to us younger brothers. And peace and blessings, salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing this word and truth and this sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakadash. Pushing to get up out of there. Shalom to the hopeful, like the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures, to faith in Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. All right. And what I want to get into in this lesson is going through the motions versus becoming. All right. Going through the motions versus becoming. All right. Because we came, we was brought into this truth. The Lord allowed us, the privilege of coming into this truth to become something pleasing unto him. The whole purpose of the Heavenly Father, awakening us with this word was for us to become, for us men to become likened unto his son, Yahushua, all right, to become like our brother, all right, our big brother, our great king, Yahushua, as he was perfect through, all right, affliction. Well, we're being perfected through affliction, okay? Matter of fact, let's go here. Let's start off here with the standard itself, all right, Yahushua, all right, because with us men, Yahushua is that standard, and the Lord is requiring even of you women, to come under the order, of those men, in all faith and sincerity, and none of us, all right, are here to just go through the motions, man, and it's easy to do, it's easy to get caught up in a certain routine, and thinking you on point, and I'm speaking to myself first and foremost, man. Really, you'll be going through the motions and not really becoming, and to continue to become, we gotta continue to look at the inward man constantly, make adjustments while dealing with the inward man constant. We gotta be our biggest critic in this thing. We don't want to be too hard on ourselves, all right, but we don't want to be too slack as well. So it's a balance, about how we scrutinize ourselves, to get better, man. To be honest, as the main thing is to be honest with ourselves, man. Because if we're not honest, well, the measurement gonna be off, and if the measurement gonna be off, then the building gonna be off, and we're the building, and the measurement is these scriptures, man. So let's go here. Hebrews 2:10. It said, "For it became him for whom are all things, and by whom are all things, and bringing many sons unto glory." All right, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through suffering. So Yahushua blazed the path, all right, that many sons, his brethren, can follow to glory. Yahushua blazed the path to glory, man, and he was obedient unto death. He was obedient. He never, all right, got on the side mission. He never got caught up in the world. He stayed faithful to the Father unto death. He completed his assignment. And we're all here on assignment, man. And this assignment has us becoming something, man. We're not here to just go through the motion to seem right on the outside. No, we're really, all right, working on the inward, man. You see, we're really becoming new creatures in Yahushua. So it says, "For it became him for whom are all things, and by whom are all things, and bringing many sons unto glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through suffering," man. And we're following that path to glory, through these sufferings, man. And the sufferings reveal where we at. There's certain things that the Lord causes to happen to show where our faith at. We gotta be honest with ourselves. Damn, I should have believed, and nothing feels good when trusting in the Lord, when we pass a test of trusting in the Lord and the Lord come through, So it's all about repetition. And right now in this grace period, the Lord is giving us reps so we can become something, man. It's all about reps so we can become something. You see? So let's go here. Because like I say, it's easy, to just, we can get caught up, speaking to myself, first and foremost, it's easy to get caught up, and just be going through the motions, man, not really building, not really changing, Let's go here. This is Matthew 7:21. It says, "Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven." So he that doeth, because saying Lord, Lord, verbalizing and that outward appearance of righteousness, that's not going to get it. We can't finesse the Most High like we on point, and the inward man still trash. Still conniving, still manipulative, still, still got the traits of this world. Nah, man. That shit is not gonna be accepted. The Lord not gonna accept that sacrifice, man. You know, and we gotta be honest with ourselves, man. That's why that daily examination and making an adjustment, and we always have to understand it could be us, man. It's us. You know, most situations, even in situations where on the surface we're right, there's still all right. The Lord is still putting a mirror on us, man. Even in situations when we right, there's still a mirror being put on us where we could have did better. Okay, that's the mindset we should have, man. That keeps us from getting content, getting complacent. Like, nah, I could have did better. I could have did better. I could have did this better. Because sometimes we can get caught up on being wrong, trying to play the victim. Okay, and when we play the victim, all right, it takes accountability on us to level up. Victims never level up. Okay. You see, when we play the victim, it takes away the need for us to level up. Okay. Whenever we play the victim, I'm speaking from all experience, man. In my little short time I've been in the truth, man, certain things I've been through, man. Playing the victim in any narrative, man, it takes away the need for us to level up, man. You see? So we have to always look inwardly in every situation how we could have moved better. It says, not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. So those that are actually becoming, doing the will sincerely, not to be seen. See, the real work is when we're not being seen. The real work is when we're not being seen. That's when the real work come in. Okay? That's when the real change comes about, when we're not being seen. Because under the because see what you call this world called virtue signaling. I think it's called virtue signaling. People do things, okay, then they got to go on the internet and speak about the good they do. That virtue signaling, because you can get some clout. You see, when clout is a when you put clout in the equation, then you have to question sincerity. Okay, when you put clout in the equation with anything. Okay, but when it's just you, all right, the Most High Yahweh, okay, that's when the real work start. That's when the real test start. Okay, that's when the real change start. That's when we the Lord really gonna see what we're about. Okay, in Jacob's trouble, it's gonna be a situation where it's just you, the Most High Yahweh. Okay, it'll be us, the Most High Yahweh. We're gonna be being tested, man, in certain situations, man. Okay, so nah, man, we're not here to just go through the motions, man. Okay, we're here to become. All right, and we'll get there in a minute. There's a spirit too, say that word. So let's go here. All right, so let's read this again. Matthew 7:21. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Now we go here to the book of James. All right, it's the book of James, chapter 1, verse 21. It says, wherefore lay apart all filthiness and superfluity of naughtiness, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your soul. Okay, now you go into superfluity. All right, let's get this word superfluity, and then we'll get that virtue signaling. All right, so this word superfluity in the Greek. Oh yeah. So you go here.
Strong's G 4050. Perisaya.
Perisaiah.
Perisaiah. So when you go to the definition of it, okay, it says residue remains. All right, when you go to the main definition, residue remains, the wickedness remaining over, all right, in the believer from his state prior to conversion. Okay, so that BS that's cultivated in us before we came into the truth, we got to constantly remove it. You know, and that's a continuous work until we change. Constantly removing that BS that was cultivated in us, all right, in the world, man, because that keeps us separated from our power, man. You know, you see that excess, man, those unnecessary traits and qualities, all right. Now those unnecessary traits and flaws, okay, that was in us before we converted to the truth, man. You know, and it's a daily washing. That's why this word is like a daily washing, man. You know, performing this word, this is washing us, man. Okay, not just going through the motion. Going through the motion doesn't wash, man. Actually applying and becoming and living this word, feeling this word, truly having a different outlook, truly having a different perspective, constantly understanding what the will of the Lord is, man. You know, that's what's washing us, man. You know, because our spirit just going through the motion just as a light scrub on the surface, man. Nah, man. We in the spirit, we need a deep cleansing. I know I do. You know, we need a deep cleansing, man. Every day we gotta doubt ourselves, going to that baptism, which is to indulge, which is to submerge. You know, that daily baptism, which is submersing and becoming, okay, what the Lord intended us to be, man. Okay, so the residue remains, the wickedness remaining over. All right, you say Christian, but we know Christians were the Israelites that follow Yahushua. Okay, when you go into what they call the Christian, you know, because Jake never called themselves the believers. The fathers of Yahushua never called themselves Christians. It was a term put on them, okay, by the non-believers, you know, and heathens. Okay, so let's go. I want to go here because we hear this word sometime in this world. It speaks about virtue signaling. Okay, so let's go here. It says virtue signaling. All right, it says virtue signaling is a conspicuous, often superficial, superficial public expression of moral values or political opinions intended to enhance one's social standing or self-image rather than to effect real change. Okay, so on camera we can be guilty of this, man, of virtue signaling, man. Okay, to look a certain way, all right, to an audience, man. Okay, but are we really that? You see, and one thing about it is we're becoming. We don't have the virtue signal. We don't have to, speak about, the details. Okay, unnecessary details about we do this, we do that, and I'm doing this, and I got this going on. You know, we don't have to go into the unnecessary details. If we're just becoming, then we're becoming. You know, and it says virtue signaling, all right, is the conspicuous, often superficial public expression of moral values or political opinions intended to enhance one's social standing and self-image rather than to affect real change. It is commonly used to align with popular, trendy, or approved views on social media, often appearing as insincere, performative, or hypocritical, man. And we don't want to do that, man. We're not here to perform. You know, we're here to just be. You know, and it feels so good to just be and not perform. You know, I went through, and just in general, not even speaking about being in the truth, man, but I've been through, phases in my life where I'm performing. I'm not being, especially in the world, a lot of times we go through the world performing, not being us, okay, not being authentic, we just performing, and that's a weight, that's a weight when you just around here performing. You see, it take a lot of effort to perform, man, but when we're just becoming, you start to move with grace, you start to be efficient, you can be light. It's like you're moving, like I say, that burden ain't on you anymore. It's like when you're just being your authentic self in your house shop, man. It's like moving real light. It's just natural. It's like it becomes like breathing. Okay, instead of trying to, pre-rehearse, every, sentence and every rebuttal and every this and every action and trying to position yourself so you can look like this. And nah, man, it's a lot of work performing, man. Becoming, is much lighter. So let's go from there. Let's go back into the book of James. All right. And I have to remind myself of this all the time, man. About am I performing or I'm becoming? And it says, wherefore lay apart all filthiness and superfluity of naughtiness and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able, okay, to save your soul. And say receive with meekness. There's a certain level of humility, man. And we have to constantly increase in humility as well. We have to continually to increase in humility in this thing, man. All right. The scriptures say what? The greater thou art, the more humble thyself, man. So the Lord levels us up in the spirit. Well, we have to have the humility to match that. Okay. Humility keeps us grounded. Okay. It keeps us realistic. All right. A lot of people get proud and get delusional because they become unrealistic about themselves, man. Okay. So being humble, keeps us rooted. Okay. The scripture says what? Knowledge puffed up, but humility keeps us grounded. And that's why the Lord causes, certain things that happen with us, man, to keep us grounded, keep us humble. Certain things the Lord does just to keep us humble, man. And if the Lord is doing things to keep us humble, He wants us to stay grounded. That means the Lord dealing. Okay. It said, but be ye doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. Yeah, so be ye doers of the word. Okay. And not hearers only, deceiving your own self. We can only deceive our own self by going through the motion. We're deceiving ourselves, man. Okay. And we're just going through the motion. We're only deceiving ourselves, man. Okay. Because the goal ain't to deceive men. You can deceive everybody on earth, man. But we're not gonna deceive the Most High, Yahweh Shai. We're not gonna deceive them. So we can pull it off. We can deceive everybody on the planet Earth to think a certain way about us. Okay, but it's two we can't deceive. The two that count: the Heavenly Father and His Son Yahweh Shai. Okay, so we'll only be deceiving ourselves, man, because deceiving men ain't the goal. Okay, we give ourselves on the pat on the back because we deceive men. That's not the goal. Okay, it said, but be ye doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. For if any says, for any be all right, for if any be a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is likened to a man building his natural face in a beholding, so like beholding his natural face in the glass. Okay. So if we're a hearer of the word and not a doer, it's like us looking, all right, in the mirror. Okay. Looking at a reflection in the mirror. But once we're away from that image, okay, we begin to what? All right, become something different. You see, we're only a certain way around a certain environment, around a certain audience. Okay, we don't want to be that. Be a certain way around our audience, but then completely different. Okay, when we're not. Okay. Because let's go in the AMP real quick. So going back, it said James 1. James 1 and 24 said, for once he has looked at himself, all right, and gone away, he immediately forgets. Okay, he immediately forgets what he looks like. But he who looks carefully into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and faithfully abides in it, not having become a careless listener who forgets, not just a careless listener, man. Okay, we just here to be seen. Okay, not just a careless listener, man. All right, just nah, man. We really gotta start. We gotta absorb what we read. We gotta absorb, what's being said, in the video. We gotta absorb these things, man. Okay. Our intentions gotta stay sincere. Okay. And it says, but an active, all right, doer who obeys, he will be blessed and favored by the Most High in what he does in his life of obedience, man. And the Lord favors that, man. The Lord honors that, man. As we start becoming, the Lord honors that, man. The Lord shows us that we on the right path. You're on the right path. I know you brothers, all right. A few of you sisters, man, you'll get that. Man, talking to you brothers, you'll get that, man. Like the Lord is do something to show I'm favoring you, son. I like what you're doing. Then he told Yahushua, when Yahushua was pleasing unto him, he let him know. So the Father lets us know when we're pleasing, and that's when we know, okay, I need to double down in this. If this pleasing to the Father, I need to double, triple, quadruple down on this. You see, if this is pleasing to the Father, this is what I need to double down on. This is pleasing to the Father, all right, through Yahushua. I need to double down on this, man. Being truly active, man, sincere, truly becoming, the Lord dealing with that, man. All right, because why? He let Yahushua know when he was pleased. Let's go here. Let's get the accounts. Matthew 3. All right, this is the book of Matthew, chapter 3. All right, in verse 16, said, after Yahushua was baptized, he came up immediately out of the water and beheld the heavens were open, and John saw the Spirit of the Most High descending as a dove and lighten on him. And behold, a voice from heaven, this is the Heavenly Father, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased and delighted. So he let Yahushua know that he was pleased, because what Yahushua was becoming what the Most High wanted him to be, which is obedient. Okay, he wasn't obedient as Adam, as King Solomon. He wasn't obedient. He failed. He fumbled the rulership. Okay, but as Yahushua, he earned a rulership to come in these times. Okay, and he was obedient unto death. He stayed the course. He stayed to the assignment. He became what the Heavenly Father wanted him to be. And in the process, the Heavenly Father let it be known that he was well pleased and delighted, man. And the Lord lets us know. I know you brothers can attest, okay, that the Lord, lets us. He'll let us know within this walk that he's pleased with what we're doing. He'll let it be obviously known. I'm pleased with that. Okay. This is Matthew 17:5. This is another account. It says, while he was still speaking of Peter, okay, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, the Heavenly Father again. It says, and a voice, all right, from the cloud said, this is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased and delighted. Listen to him. Okay, so the Heavenly Father let Yahushua know twice. Okay, it's recorded twice. Okay, that what he was pleased with how Yahushua was moving, man. Okay, and the Lord does that now, man. He lets us know that he pleased with how we're moving, man. Okay, so let's go here to the book of James, chapter 1, in verse 25 again, and we'll read 26. It says, "But he who looks carefully into the perfect law, the law of liberty," okay, so we have certain liberty, but that liberty is to get better in Yahweh Shai. We have liberty, but we're not judged, okay, by the letter of the law, you know, to where, you know, things that are worthy of death, okay, if things are worthy of certain punishment, well, we have a liberty. It doesn't mean we wild out in the law. I mean, wild out outside the law. No, we rehearse the law to the best of our ability, okay? But we have a grace to where we fall, you know, where we're able to, instead of suffering that punishment, we're able to reflect and get better. And you see, that's what the liberty for us to reflect and get better. You see, it's just like practicing, man. When you're practicing, you know, you can, you know, the coach can stop the action, okay, and address certain things and make certain adjustments. You know, when you're in the practice, when you're in the game, you don't have that privilege, okay. And when you're in the live game, now you gotta deal with the consequences immediately, okay. But in practice, you have, all right, the privilege, all right. You have the grace of being able to stop the action, okay, and reflect, okay. So we're in this grace period to where we can stop, you know, the action, you know, we can reflect, okay, make the adjustments and get back in the game and get better, man. Okay, it says, and faithfully abides by it, not having become a careless listener who forgets, but an active doer who obeys, he will be blessed and favored by the Most High in what he does in his life in obedience. If anyone thinks, all right, I think that's it. Yeah, yeah, that's it. All right, so let's go from there. Let's get First Corinthians. Let's get this in the book of First Corinthians here. This is the book of First Corinthians chapter 9, all right, in verse 24. All right, First Corinthians 9:24 says, "Do you not know, all right, that in a race all the runners run their very best to win, but only one receives the prize? So run your race." You see, run your race, man. We all have our race, you know, and you can tell when you're scribing in your race. You can see the progress, man. You know, you see the progress. I say, and the progress is not just on camera, but off camera. How we interact, how we deal amongst the body. Okay, so run your race in such a way that you may seize the prize and make it yours. Not every athlete who goes into training and competes, all right, in the games is disciplined, okay, and exercises self-control in all things. Okay. So we want to go into this thing disciplined with self-control. And that's one of the things that is being, you know, cultivated in us in this truth, man, is discipline and self-control. The exact opposite of this world. Okay, this world told us what to obey our thirst. Just do it. Do as thou wilt. Indulge. Okay. But the truth is teaching us self-restraint, discipline, moderation. Okay. It says they do it to win a crown. All right. It said, because we read again, it said, now every athlete who goes into training and competes in the games, all right, is disciplined and exercise self-control in all things. You know, certain athletes are, you know, they're extremely disciplined leading up to the season, or all right, big fights or so forth and so on. There's a level of discipline, man. You know, they go through a phase of extreme discipline, you know, to get their body to a certain point. Okay, their mental to a certain point just to perform as an athlete. Okay, so how much spiritual discipline that we should have? You know, it said they do it to win a crown that withers, but we do it to receive an imperishable crown that cannot wither. Okay, that cannot wither, which is the kingdom. You see, we're gonna win the kingdom. Okay, and we all have a trophy, which is our crown. You know, that crown, that being a joint heir with Yahushua, that crown. Okay, that's the trophy, because it's gonna be forever. That authority, okay, that power, okay, that true freedom, okay, that rest, that's gonna be forever, man. Okay, a crown that cannot wither. They do it for, okay, the trophies of this world. We're doing it for the crowns with Yahushua, man. Okay, therefore I do not run without a definite goal. Yeah, we're not just going through the motion. No, we have a goal in mind. We should want to be compatible as possible with Yahushua. Okay, that should be the goal, to be compatible as possible with Yahushua, man. You know, we have to ask ourselves, man, am I becoming an asset for the kingdom to come, or would I be a liability? Okay, as women, you have to be honest with yourself. Will I be an asset to a man of the Lord, or would I be a liability? Okay, that's an honest conversation we all got to have. Okay, and it says, I do not flail around like one beating the air, just shadow boxing. Yeah, just going through the motion, man, just beating the air, just here, just to be here, just, you know, really not sincere, just here, just to be here, man, to be seen, to look right. Okay, really not becoming. Nah, man, we here to become. We should have a goal in mind. Okay, he said, but like a boxer, I strictly discipline my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached the gospel to others, I myself will not somehow be disqualified as unfit for service. Yeah, man. You know? So the Apostle Paul, you know, when you read in the let's read this in the KJV. You know, we have to become a slave to this wisdom, a slave to discipline. Okay, this is 1 Corinthians 9:27 said, but I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway, man. You know, so we keep ourselves under subjection. Okay, we begin to, where the spirit dominates the flesh. You know, we just begin to go into a point where the spirit, okay, it begins to dominate over the flesh, keeping the flesh in subjection. You know, we still in the flesh. You know, you have, okay, moments, man, but it comes to a point to where, man, the spirit is just dominant over the flesh, man. Okay, because of the flesh is, you know, the flesh, you know, emotions, ego. You see, if the spirit don't dominate these things, man, well, we stand a chance of an overthrow. Okay, least that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. Yeah, so if we're preaching and not becoming, okay, well, guess what? You run the chance of being a castaway. Look at these men, okay, who preach, sounded good on camera, okay, but off camera they wasn't becoming. Okay, now they're castaway. Okay, one guy, you know, just examples. One guy got AI pictures with Cardi B like he at courtside. Another nigga calling on Jesus. Okay, and they're just example of these men that preach to others, but now they're castaways, man, because they wasn't becoming. Okay, they were just going through the motions of teaching. because clout was a factor, money was a factor. Okay, you see, and that became their purpose, man. That's why one guy, all right, Gorilla he don't teach anymore because the money factor is not there anymore. That became his why. Okay, our why is becoming, all right, joint heirs with Yahweh Shai, man. You know, so it's not clout based, it's not money based. Okay, so that's the point. You know, I leave it there. You know, just wanted to tap into that. You know, like I say, speaking to myself first and foremost. So, Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you few sisters edified once again. I want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessings, salutations to the hopeful Shalom.